reading from the book of Exodus, chapter 34, verse 1 through 11. The Lord said to Moses, "Cut 2 stone tablets like the former, that I may write on them the commandments which were on the former tablets that you broke. Get ready for tomorrow morning, when you are to go up Mount Sinai, and there present yourself to me on the top of the mountain. No one shall come up with you, and no one is even to be seen on any part of the mountain. Even the flocks and the herds are not to be go grazing toward the mountain." Moses then cut 2 stone tablets like the former, and early the next morning he went up Mount Sinai as the Lord had commanded him, taking along the 2 stone tablets. Having come down in a cloud, the Lord stood with him there and proclaimed his name, Lord. Thus the Lord passed before him and cried out, the Lord, a merciful and gracious God, slow to anger and rich in kindness and fidelity, continuing his kindness for 1,000 generations, and forgiving wickedness and crime and sin, yet not declaring the guilty guiltless, but punishing children and grandchildren to the 3rd and 4th generation for their father's wickedness. Moses at once bowed down to the ground in worship. Then he said, "If I find favor with you, O Lord, do come along in our company. This is indeed a stiff-necked people, yet pardon our wickedness and sins, and receive us as your own. Here then, said the Lord, is the covenant I will make. Before the eyes of all your people, I will work such marvels as have never been wrought in any nation anywhere on earth, so that this people among whom you live may see how awe-inspiring are the deeds which I, the Lord, will do at your side. But you, on your part, must keep the commandments I am giving you today. I will drive out before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites." Here we see round 2. Moses, who has broken the 10 Commandments because the people have broken the 10 Commandments. He broke the physical commandments because the people disobeyed the laws of God. Moses is told to make 2 new commandments to go up to the top of the mountain that the Lord might write, as with a finger, the new commandments on them. The same commandments as before, but write them anew. Moses begs for the people. And God says that he is righteous to the 1,000th generation, that he blesses those to the 1,000th generation. And to see that what we do not only affects us, but affects our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And he says, and your wickedness will affect to the 4th or 5th generation. Our wickedness will resonate time and time again. Now, I want you to think about this. If you sin and say you have an affair and a marriage is broken, this affects your children who have parents who are separated. This affects your grandchildren who have grandparents who are separated. And finally, maybe in the 4th or 5th generation, you can have children who see parents and grandparents who are married, who have this great blessing. We're able to see this example of love that lasts, to be able to be optimistic about their own future and their own possible marriage. If somebody is a murderer, they go to prison. And then the child says, oh, my father the murderer, my grandfather the murderer, my great-grandfather the murderer, my great-great-grandfather the murderer. This sin echoes on down through the generations. Likewise, what you do today affects your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. Think about it. For many of us, maybe our first Christian ancestor was 20 generations ago, 50 generations ago, and because they accepted Christ, their children were more readily able to accept Christ, and their grandchildren were more readily able to accept Christ. And so you see this cascade down through the generations. Because one person is faithful, because one person is righteous, it affects their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. We are so free, our free will is so radical that we not only affect our own freedom, we affect the freedom of others. Our freedom is so radical that it not only affects us, but it affects other people as well. That what we do affects not only ourselves, but affects our children, our grandchildren, our descendants, and the whole world. That our freedom and how we use it affects all of humanity, going forward to the present and even backwards. Because things, at the very least, are interpreted backwards based on what happens today. But I don't want to get too philosophical there. What I want us to think about is that our freedom affects others. Our actions affects others. Our addictions affect others. Our sins, our virtues, our prayers. Why? Because if we let God into our lives, He will overflow from us. And if we do not let God in our lives, we will try to plug up those others from whom He does flow, and pass on despair and temptation and sin and hopelessness. We are free. Let us, in our freedom, choose to follow God.